What's going on, everybody? This is John with Super Deformed Gamescast, and I am here with one of my co-hosts and panelists, Justin. Justin, what's going on, my man?
Not much. How are you tonight?
I'm doing okay, man. And Justin and I are here to talk about Spider-Man. I'm sorry, Marvel's Spider-Man on the PS4. Impossible to find on the PS Store unless you search for Marvel's Spider-Man, as I learned when I was trying to download this damn thing. That was an adventure. I feel like an idiot. It actually took me 30 minutes to find it because on the PlayStation Store it's listed as Marvel's Spider-Man, although it's not listed like that on the box art or in any of the promotional material that I've seen.
Marvel's Spider-Man is the official title, but that's funny. I didn't realize it wouldn't show up if you just search for Spider-Man.
If you search for it's just for whatever reason it was only showing up under the M's for me.
Well, it's still faster than it took me to install the game. So
you had a lot of problems trying to get this thing installed, man. Like watching you try to do that was kind of a journey.
I for those that don't know, I had a faulty disc when I first got the game, and it was an issue that affected multiple people. It seems there's a bad batch of discs out there, and it took over 4 hours to install. And I kept stopping and restarting it to try to get it to go, thinking something was wrong. So it took 4 hours. I was able to get a replacement disc, and that one's fine. But it was a journey that first night.
Well, so now that you actually have the disc installed, and you've actually finished the game now. I myself have also. I finished the game about 4 days after I picked it up, and it's just you and me because not a whole lot of other people on the podcast have cleared it yet.
Mm-hmm. I have platinumed it. I've spent quite a bit of time with it. Yeah,
I'm close to my platinum. I think I'm at 95% completion right now. I've got a few more of the drone missions to do. I hate the fucking drone missions.
Understandable.
But we are here to talk about our feelings on the game now that we have finished it. So this will be a little spoiler discussion. So if you've not finished the game and you're sensitive to spoiler talk, then I recommend you back out and run as far away as you can. If you don't care, or if you finish the game, then stick around and listen to us give our thoughts on it. So I'll go ahead and start just right up front. I fucking love this game. To me, this is... I think the best way I could describe it is this is Spider-Man's Arkham moment. You know what I mean? I feel like this game does for Spider-Man as a character in the medium what Arkham Asylum did for Batman. Which is it's a mature... it's a deep, mature storyline. I feel like in the same vein as Arkham, it is... The fact that it's not tethered to any existing comic or film storylines works 100% in its benefit.
Yeah, absolutely. That was kind of the one thing that I was really taken aback with the game was just how good the story was, particularly the characterization. I was really impressed with how Insomniac, they took from every kind of Spider-Man piece of media there has ever been. Like, there's references to the other games, there's references to movies, comics, everything. But they also managed to create, their own takes on characters that I felt were unique and really some of my favorite takes on these characters so far. They, respected the history of the franchise, but they weren't beholden to it. And I really appreciated that because there were still things that were surprising, but they also really seemed to get, what people expect from Spider-Man.
Well, and as far as the story goes, while it was very, very good, it's honestly one of my I've read Spider-Man my entire life. I'm a lifelong comics guy, so I've read Spider-Man my entire life, and that character's story arc has seen some ups and downs over the decades. This is legitimately one of my favorite Spider-Man stories. Having said that, I do feel like the story was a little bit predictable in parts. Like, for example, there was a lot of talk on social media about the fact that, this is just when the game dropped, and people were, talking about Otto Octavius, and his, his metamorphosis into Dr. Octopus, and people were screaming about spoilers, and I'm like, oh, okay. I mean, and like, as soon as he popped up on screen, I was like, okay, well, I know where this is going.
Yeah, I mean, it was pretty obvious, especially since there was one member of the Sinister Six they didn't show
exactly
ahead of time.
Guys,
but
how much of a spoiler is that really?
Yeah, but I mean, I did think it kind of worked in the game, in the game's favor, because it added an extra set of tension to some of the early stuff with Otto and Peter. By the way, the voice actor for Otto was phenomenal.
Can we just talk real quick about that final scene with Peter and Otto after their fight?
Yeah,
or during and after their fight. Not just the writing, but the delivery of those lines.
Yeah, the performances were fantastic.
There was a moment when Yuri Lowenthal, he played Peter Parker / Spider-Man, and just that moment when he says "you knew," it just sent chills down my arm. I was like, Jesus,
every line they had, just cut into each other, in that final sequence. And the performance of the guy that played Otto, I was really impressed because I liked how they set him up, as, kind of a tragic figure. And they did a bit of that with Mr. Negative as well, where you get to see the side of them, the nice side of them before everything gets going. And, for the whole course of the game, what's going to happen to Otto, but, you still feel it when, he finally snaps.
Well, I think what made it all the more tragic was, the fact that this is 8 years. I mean, Peter Parker's been Spider-Man for 8 years now. He's 23 years old. Uncle Ben is long dead, so he hasn't, he lost that kind of really important father figure in his life. And I feel like he was building those.
Oh, absolutely.
He had that bond with Otto Octavius. I mean, and on a different level even than Uncle Ben, because this is a man that he had admired his entire life. And he says, when I was a kid, I wanted to be you. He said, I wanted to be Otto Octavius. And so that scene when him and Otto are fighting on the side of Oscorp, on the side of the Oscorp building, and Peter is just screaming at him, I worshipped you, you threw it all away, and you could props to Yuri Lowenthal. I mean, he did such an amazing job injecting all that pain and all that, just a lifetime of admiration instantly going cold in Peter's voice. Just really, it's some of the best. It's some of the best VA I think we've had this entire generation. No,
I
don't think
agree
saying
with you.
That is hyperbole.
The story was actually something I had lower expectations for from Insomniac. Not that I thought their stories are bad, but I didn't have the same expectations as I would of other series and other developers, and they stepped up to the plate and really, really elevated their cutscene direction, their voice acting direction. I really want to know how they went about animating the arms for Octavius and stuff, because that was that must have been a real challenge and stuff too. It was a huge step up in writing and storytelling for the studio. And I think they nailed it, and I really, really am looking forward to see what they do with these characters in the future.
So, there were some complaints levied against the fact that the story kind of throws all those, top tier Spider-Man villains at you at the very end, right? They're not dropped throughout the story. At the beginning, you have a fight against Shocker, which is a really cool.
With tearing apart the bank and everything.
Yeah, and then you have two battles with Mr. Negative throughout the game, which I thought were some of the best boss
The one on the subway is fantastic.
Was great, yeah. And then you fight Electro and Rhino. I'm sorry, Electro and Vulture at the same time, and then you fight Rhino and Scorpion at the same time.
The Electro Vulture fight I thought was fantastic. Like, it was like entirely an aerial battle. It was so cool.
It was still like and again, like, I'm not knocking it because there's really no other way to do these sorts of boss fights, but I also excuse me, I also do understand the criticisms of, well, it's just it's the same, like, you throw something and then you hit triangle to zip in, you beat them up, and then you just repeat it, right? Like, that is what they are, but I think what makes them so enjoyable is the visual spectacle and the scope, especially like you just mentioned, the Electro and Vulture fight, which I don't remember touching
No.
the ground once.
Yeah, I didn't. I didn't. Yeah, and that was the thing, is like I didn't even realize it when I was doing it. That's actually kind of transitioning into one other thing I really wanted to talk about, with just how good the feel of this game is, both for swinging and combat. Um, and like the Electro Vulture fight, I thought was one of the best examples of that, because I, without even thinking about it, did not touch the ground for the entire fight. And it's not like a simple fight. Like, you have to, target these generators and dodge one another while they come at you, and find,
I feel like I do feel, though, that doing that fight before the Rhino and Scorpion fight highlighted. I think it cast the Rhino and Scorpion fight in a negative light, only because
I agree.
I feel like Vulture and Electro was more just a much more impressive fight, and I feel like the Rhino Scorpion fight was just a little bland compared to. But that's solely because it's following such an epic moment.
And I agree too. Plus, also just character wise, I think Vulture and Electro are way cooler than Rhino and Scorpion.
Yeah, well, like, I really like what they did, though, with a Scorpion's venom causing Peter to hallucinate. It reminded me a little bit of the Scarecrow sections from the first.
Yeah, both Mr. Negative and Scorpion kind of had moments like that.
And I feel like in a sequel, which you and I both know is going to happen, I feel like the inclusion of a character like Mysterio has a ton of possibilities or something like that.
Yeah, I mean, that was something I was even thinking of
imagine,
before this game came out. Like, if they wanted to do something like with some of, like, to relate it, like if you were going based off of Arkham, like the Mad Hatter side quests, or something like Mysterio would be an awesome villain for that.
I think Mysterio is probably too big of a. He's too tier, like high tier of a Spidey villain to relegate him to side. I think he's a main story guy. Although we did get some of those moments, just like we did in Arkham City and Arkham Knight. Like some of those side missions involving smaller villains like Taskmaster and Screwball. And Tombstone, and I actually thought the Tombstone.
Yeah, the Tombstone one was awesome, and like that was like, and those side characters, like especially Taskmaster, like
he was hard.
I was very surprised to see them show up. So like they were a really cool surprise, and I hope they keep going with that.
Well, and there's like all kinds of smaller Spider-Man villains you can use to fill those gaps in the next one, right? Like, you've got, characters like Boomerang. I mean, I think Shocker, honestly, is a good candidate in the second, in the second game for a bunch of side mission stuff. I think there's a lot of potential there, but I want to get back to what you were saying about the combat and before I played the game, I'd seen a bunch of people tell me, I'd heard a bunch of people compare it to Arkham's combat. I first played the game, Spider-Man, that is, at PAX West, right before it released, and I don't think it's all that similar to Arkham, to be perfectly honest with you. I think it's a lot more free-flowing. There's not so much of an emphasis on dodging as there is an emphasis on moving. And staying active, not rooting yourself, because in Arkham Asylum, as Batman, you could just kind of stand there and somebody comes up and then they take a swing and you hit triangle and you counter, but for Spider-Man, what they do is it's all about constant movement. It's all about moving. It's all about webbing your foes up. So yeah, I don't feel like the combat in Spider-Man is all that comparable to Arkham, or to Batman Arkham Asylum or Arkham City style combat. purely in the sense that I feel like Batman's combat is all about being stationary and throwing up those counters, whereas Spider-Man combat is all about never staying in one spot and constantly being on the move and using the environment to your advantage.
Yeah, exactly. Like, I can see why if you were just watching a video of Spider-Man's combat that you would draw up, some of those Arkham comparisons, because like the effect of when his spider sense is up looks a lot like, the counter prompt from Arkham, and, people will, dodge once that comes up. And some of like the input prompts, like for the takedowns and stuff, are similar, but it feels entirely different. Like Arkham is all about these big solid hits that like lock you into an animation, where Spider-Man doesn't hit nearly as hard as Batman does. He's got to stay on the move.
But I felt like the using the environment made the combat so much more intuitive in Spider-Man than anything that Arkham Asylum did. And don't get me wrong, like I'm not taking anything away from Arkham Asylum's or Arkham City's combat. It was great. I mean, those games do very visceral, hard-hitting, punchy combat very well. But I thought it was so cool, like how you could use the environment to your advantage in Spider-Man, like pulling down shelves on demons that are running at you, or
that was
webbing up an iron girder and just giving it a jerk and knocking it into some unsuspecting fist goons, or even the fact that later in the game, we can rip the turrets off of like the Sable APCs and throw those. Yes, or just webbing an enemy up and punching them into a wall, and they stick to the wall, and boom, they're done. Like they're incapacitated for the rest of the fight. Little touches like that I thought were so cool.
Yeah, kind of my one complaint with it is it's not so much relevant once you get into the game, but early on in the game, the combat feels very overwhelming because you don't have use of the gadgets.
Yeah.
It kind of takes a long time to get all of the gadgets that you're going to need.
Well, I think for me, the problem was that I think this is more a problem with me than it was with the game itself. But for maybe the first hour, it took some adjusting for me simply because I wanted to play it like Arkham. I can see that. Can't. Like I cannot stress enough. You cannot. If you try to play this game like Arkham Asylum, you will die over and over and over. As I learned that first hour of the game, over and over and over.
Yeah, the game was harder than I thought it was going to be. Actually,
it was difficult. What difficulty did you play it on?
Whatever the normal equivalent is. Was it amazing, or was it
amazing? Yeah.
Or the
it was amazing.
It was like friendly neighborhood, amazing,
and then spectacular,
ultimate, or whatever.
Spectacular was the next one up.
Spectacular.
Right? Yeah. Although I will say, I did feel like some of the Sable mercenaries were a bit too overpowered. I feel like taking down some of those outposts was a lot more difficult than taking down like Rhino and Scorpion, for example. And for me, that kind of seems a bit unbalanced when you're talking about mercenaries as opposed to superpowered villains that give Spider-Man a run for his money in the comics. I felt like there was kind of a believability unbalance there that messed with me just a little bit. I mean, it's a minor little thing, but it was something I noticed.
Those guys were hard to take down until I figured out which gadgets work really well and like what the best way to break their armor is and stuff.
Those guys that fly,
like
the guys with the jetpacks, oh god, I fucking hated those guys until I learned to just web them up and kick them away as quickly as possible.
Well, just a single impact web takes them out because they fall so much they just automatically get stuck to a wall.
Oh, I fucking hated those guys. Jesus. And I wanted to talk a little bit about the swinging mechanic as well, because there were. I think it's safe to say that probably not everybody, but most people agree that prior to this, Spider-Man 2 for PS2 was the one Spider-Man game to really nail that feeling of being Spider-Man and slinging around New York. But I feel like that has been surpassed here. Honestly, it feels so good once you get used to the to the traversal system. It's web slinging through the city through New York feels so good that there were moments I would just go zipping past my objective and I wouldn't want to stop because I'm like I've got momentum, I've got speed, this is fun, I'll come back. I just don't want to stop going.
Yeah,
it was so much fun.
It's insane just how intuitive it feels. Like at first, like, the inputs kind of feel a little odd, but once they click, like, I never felt out of control, and I always knew exactly what I needed to do to build up speed, to increase my elevation, to lower it. Like, it was just such an intuitive system, and the way the music swells
up
as you start swinging, like, it just absolutely nails, like, the big superhero feeling every single time, and it doesn't get old. It's probably one of the most thrilling, like, moment-to-moment gameplay mechanics I have experienced in a very long time.
And I don't feel like we can talk about the web slinging and the music without talking about the amazing lighting in this game. Especially when you're wet, especially when it's evening, like the sun is setting and you're swinging through the city in that orange sky, and the music swells, and you catch those sun rays coming between buildings as you're swinging towards the horizon, and it felt like a Spider-Man movie. The feeling, like the epic feeling when you combine all those factors is unbelievable. And Insomniac, like the lighting system that they implemented in this game was just, I mean, this game was made for photo mode. Like this is,
and
it was unbelievable.
Like, the game also makes an amazing case for, not always having a day-night cycle can work pretty well, because it's fixed time of days, until the story changes it. And then at the end of it, once you finish the game, you can set it. But yeah, it's gorgeous. And like, we talked a lot about how they nailed the Spider-Man feeling, but they also really nailed the New York feeling, which was really cool.
I mean, actually, to the point where my wife, who lived and worked in New York for a long time, she was watching me play, and she was telling me, "Oh, go here, and like, she wanted to check, she wanted to check and see if there was anything that that she remembered, and there was, it's not like a perfect one-to-one recreation of New York City, but it's pretty damn close.
No, not at all.
And it is. Man, like, just that feeling of climbing up to what is it's supposed to be the One World Trade Center. Like, I know it's not because of why, like, there's weird licensing issues, but it's supposed to be. Climbing to the top of that thing and just taking that view in a total 360. Like, I caught myself just sitting there for like 20 minutes, just listening to the city and looking out over the horizon and just thinking, I am Spider-Man. Like, I've played so many Spider games, but this is the first game where I feel like I am Spider-Man.
The draw distance was also insane. Like, on top of all those buildings, like you can go up to the top of Avengers Tower and look around at the entirety of Manhattan, and like, the buildings look like they're all full quality as far as you can see. They're not like obvious, like really low poly models and stuff. And once you dive down, like, the streets are busy. Like, there's a lot of NPCs around. There's a lot of cars around.
And I love that you can, like, drop down and, like, give them a little finger gun point, like, hey, I'm Spidey, like, and they'll react to you.
Take a selfie with them.
I love it.
Yeah.
It's just the, little touches like that just really do. It goes so long into selling New York City as a living, breathing place. I understand that things get a little repetitive, like how many times can you stop a mugging or a car chase, but honest to God, like, I just enjoyed the combat so much that I would always go out of my way to do this stuff. In fact, even the collectibles, like, there was something so compelling about just like, because the first thing I did when I started the game was I went from district to district, and I just did all the towers. I did all the radio towers. Right off the bat. That was the very first thing I did. And I found myself, and I don't always do this in games, but I found myself, I would see that green glow of a backpack. And there's so many cool little lore moments in those backpacks that I felt compelled to go out and hunt them.
I loved the backpacks. Like, the little bit of, like, Spidey Easter egg that each one of them was.
Like Sandman. There's literally Sandman in a vial in one of these backpacks, which I thought was so cool.
But did you notice that one was the one that was on top of Avengers Tower? The vial of dust was on Avengers Tower. I'm pretty sure that was an Infinity War joke too.
Well, and there was also a really cool Spider-Man 2 movie call-out when he was stopping the subway, and he's like, I remember this being easier last time. I was like, oh, yes, It's so good. It's so good.
There's so much stuff like that. And like, just the core, like, gameplay felt so good that, like, chase down these 12 pigeons, which normally, like, that's the absolute worst type of collectible in an open-world game. But I really enjoyed just swinging around real quick, and like they only took a few seconds to get most of the time.
Honestly, like I feel like some of those missions would have been extremely dull in other games, but so many of them played so well to this game's strengths that they didn't seem like chores. Like chasing pigeons, for example, like in an Infamous, for example, that would have been mind numbing. Right, but
or like Assassin's Creed or something.
Yeah, it's like, Christ Almighty, why am I doing this? But the traversal system in Spider-Man, for example, is so fun, and I felt like that was something that Insomniac really nailed. Was tying some of these collectathons into a traversal system that is so much fun that you don't mind doing them. And before we get too long in the tooth here, I do want to talk about those post-credit scenes, Justin, and
yes,
and a sequel. And we'll start with let's talk about Miles. Let's talk about Miles Morales.
Yeah, let's do them in order. Well, there's the mid-credit sequence, and then there's the post-credit sequence.
So Miles Morales, who, by the way, it's great to see this character get his due. So
absolutely,
such a
I 100% agree.
So a lot of people have who have finished the game have been speculating that you'll play as Miles Morales in the sequel. I think that's partially true. I think you will play as both Peter and Miles. I still think, with the revelation of Harry, I think the next game is still at its core going to be a Peter Parker story. But
yeah, that's what I think as well.
But I do think you're going to get. I think they'd be crazy. No, I mean they're clearly signaling that you're going to get a playable Miles. I mean that's obvious.
Yeah, and also like playable Miles with powers kind of fixes one of the other problems, which is the stealth segments. Exactly. With the game, which we haven't mentioned yet.
They were fine.
But, there's this... I enjoyed them because they were easy and they were a nice change of pace. But I do agree that work needs to be done on them. Like, it was a lot better later on when you were MJ and you had a couple gadgets. Yeah. Like, give her some more gadgets, and then also Miles won't have... will have powers in the next game, so that kind of takes him out of the equation from having some of those as well.
But... Yeah, I don't think we're going to get a story that centers on Miles per se. Now, however, having said that, and we can tie this into what is going on with Harry, they are clearly foreshadowing Norman's transformation into Green Goblin.
Absolutely. Oh yeah. Very clearly.
Not only with all the gadgets lying around, did you catch the mask? That very goblin-y looking mask on his desk.
Well, also there's there's the mask, there's the bombs, and then the other side of his apartment, there's like a bunch of like kabuki masks. Yeah. And I'm pretty sure that those masks are going because like the combat mask just kind of looks like standard, army
but it
kind
looks
of thing.
Like it's got like a big white mouth on it.
Yeah, but then there's like the kabuki masks on the other side of the room, which I'm pretty sure are going to influence, the goblin-y look of it.
Well, and what's interesting is that when you put that military grade mask on, and you're looking at that secret door up in the corner, there's a little image of the experimental battle armor, the battle suit.
Yeah, there's the armor, and then also
the drones, which
there's a blueprint of the glider.
Yeah, and then of course there's the pumpkin bombs in his little hidden room there. And then like they kind of tie it all together when he walks into that room with Harry and he's bathed in that green light. I was like, okay, here we go. He's going to be the Green Goblin. You can't get more on the nose than that. But it's also it also we got to mention Harry and what looks to be a symbiote.
Yes.
I want to stress. So let's pick this apart. I don't think Harry Osborn is going to become Venom. I don't. I think.
See, I hope he does. I don't. I think that would.
I don't think he will.
I think
Justin. I think what's going to happen is, I think Peter is going to get the symbiote, and there will be a playable segment where Peter gets corrupted, and you have to fight him as Miles.
Oh, that's also something I am expecting. Yeah. But I think Harry as Venom would add something to that character that I think it often lacks with the Eddie Brock rivalry, especially because Peter doesn't work as a reporter anymore. I don't know. I think it would add a level of investment with MJ and Peter that could be really cool.
It could, but
but yes, I do agree that I think Peter is going to get symbioted, and you're going to play as Miles.
And you're going to fight Peter. Him. Yeah. So here's what I think is going to happen in the sequel. I think they're going to introduce Eddie Brock as a character that is reporting on Spider-Man. I mean, he was in there's an Eddie Brock reference in this game.
Yes, there is.
I do not think that Harry's going to become or I don't think he's going to become Venom. I think Peter will get that suit. I think you'll use it for part of the game, and your methods will get darker and darker until a character like both Mary Jane and Miles will see that there's something going on with Peter. He and Miles will get in a fight. You'll fight him as Miles. He will reject the suit, and it'll fall into Eddie Brock. And then and you will fight Norman Osborn. Norman Osborn will be the main antagonist in this game, and then which will set up a Venom, a Venom showdown for the trilogy. I could be wrong, but that is honestly where I see this going.
I mean, that makes sense. I was actually surprised because Insomniac had said ahead of time, they kind of hinted that Goblin would not be in this game. And they outright said there would be no symbiote stuff. I mean, there's the post-credits tease, but for the main story, there's no symbiote stuff.
This could all be just a big red herring. I thought for sure that could not be a symbiote at all. I mean,
it reached out and touched Norman's hand.
Yeah.
I
mean, so it was. So what's interesting is that
at first it seemed like. Before I took in everything, there's the green glow around him in the cylinder. So I'm like, oh, is Harry going to be Goblin in this? And then, the camera kind of pans and you see all the, the black tendrils and stuff around. And then it reaches out at the end and it's like, oh, that's the symbiote. So, I'm really interested to see what they do with it because I really liked what Insomniac has done with the characters so far. And I think they could make it cool. Because I want to see a bit more, from the characterization of Venom than what he typically has.
Yeah, and I agree with you. I do think that, introducing or introducing Harry as a character with the duality of a Venom character or a character, in a symbiote suit with that personal connection to Peter, I do think that would add an extra layer to that character that traditionally hasn't been there. Having said that,
and it's also pretty similar to what they did with Otto.
It is
in this game.
I just don't. I don't think they're going to do that. But I could be wrong. Who knows? I mean, I could be way off base. That's just the feel I'm getting from it. We also have to remember that in the so this is actually pulling from the Ultimate comic storyline. In the Ultimate storyline, or in Ultimate Spider-Man, in that universe, the symbiote was a medical suit designed to heal, created by Oscorp.
Yes, I did know that.
So it's interesting that they're pulling from that universe as well.
Before we wrap up, I do want to plug my article.
Please, no, I know that's a great point. That's a great point.
Medium. It's a topic that we didn't really get into, but I feel like we'd kind of be just dragging it out, and I'd just be kind of reiterating the same points I made in that article. It's a quick read. It's just a couple pages. But I talk about the Feast Center, which is the homeless shelter that Aunt May works at, that was established by Martin Lee, and that Peter and Miles volunteer at. And I talk about how much I liked how that was portrayed in the game and what it means for the characterization of Miles and Peter and masculinity in superhero stuff in general. So if you head on over to medium.com / is it just /SDGC?
Yep. And you can go there and check out Justin's article on the Feast Center, which is fantastic, by the way, man. Very well written. Good shit.
Thank you, dude.
You guys got to go check that out. And we'll we'll wrap up on this. Justin, where does this sit for you in the year as far as when you start talking about your game of the year discussions, what you've played this year, how does this compare?
I think this is number 2 for me. I think it just sits right behind God of War.
Okay.
It's very close. I just think especially with like some of the side content and just some of the general design choices. I think there's a lot more room for Spider-Man to grow. But yes, I was surprised at how good it was. I expected it to be a good game and that I would like it. I was not expecting it to be one of my favorite Spider-Man stories of all time.
Absolutely. I think for me, it's right now. It's right up there with God of War and Octopath Traveler. And honestly, when the time comes and we're talking about on SDGC about what games we enjoyed most this year, this is gonna be one of the hardest years for me in terms of picking that one game that stands head and shoulders above everything else for me.
Yeah, I kind of famously hate doing ranked lists.
I don't like them either, especially since you've seen how they turn out on SDGC.
Yes, I have seen that. I was not a part of that, but I have seen it.
You want to be a part of that.
But yes, I don't usually like doing the ranked lists, but I think right now, if I had to choose a couple, it would be God of War and Spider-Man. And I'm very glad that both seem to have been very successful.
Yeah, absolutely.
Both set Sony's records for launches, which is awesome. I like seeing great games do well.
Yeah, and these are all games that absolutely deserve to do to do well. So it's just good news all around. We'll go ahead and wrap it up here. We hope you guys enjoyed our discussion on Spider-Man and our thoughts on the combat story and what we think is to come. Don't forget to like and subscribe to all of our channels. You can please subscribe to twitch.tv/officialsdgc, youtube.com/superdeformedgamescast, and please follow us on Twitter @officialsdgc. And until then, this has been our Spoilercast on Spider-Man, and we will see you guys next Thursday at 9 p.m. Eastern Standard Time. Take it easy.
Have a good night.